Hey there, hope you're doing good. Founders often want to go fast. They want a new feature to be launched every week. To some extent, this is a good character trait for a founder. In a startup, you need to go fast. If you want to take years to do things by the book, you should work in a big company, which is bureaucratic and moves slowly, not in a startup, let alone start a startup. So, a desire for speed is a good thing, but too much of a good thing becomes a bad thing. If you want to exercise, that's a good thing. But if you exercise for 12 hours a day, that's a bad thing. It's not healthy for you. The same goes for wanting to go fast. And when founders want to go fast, they skip on engineering practices. They are perceived as kind of burdensome or slowing you down or unnecessary or bureaucratic, right? It's perceived as, I don't know, filing your taxes. It doesn't help you, but you need to do it. It's a massive drain on your time. But that's not how engineering practices are. They are actually a foundation that helps you build on top. You don't see them, so people who are not skilled at engineering will drop them. But without a foundation, the house you build on top will collapse. So let's look at this in the form of a graph. Here, the x-axis represents time. You have 4 quarters. The y-axis represents the results or the outcomes you have achieved. If you follow bad engineering practices, initially in the first quarter, you will achieve a lot. More than if you had followed good engineering practices. You will feel good. You will feel you have made the right decision. But then after that, things will stagnate. There is only a very small improvement from Q1 to Q2 and Q2 to Q3 and Q3 to Q4, as you can see from this graph. On the other hand, if you follow good engineering practices, initially things will be slow. Why did I hire this person, you may wonder, as a non-technical founder? Because results are all you can see. You don't see the foundation, it is underground. So you may even wonder, why did I hire this person? Did I make a mistake? But then, as subsequent quarters come, the speed increases. By Q2, you have already achieved more than if you had followed bad engineering practices, and so on. The speed increases. So if you look over the course of a year, you have actually achieved more by following good engineering practices than by following bad ones. That is why it's not an overhead, it's not a bureaucracy, it's a foundation. Of course, people have even higher unrealistic expectations, like the dotted line. They don't want to make a trade off either in the short term or in the long term. They have unrealistically high expectations. That's a fantasy. Ignore the fantasy. There's no point talking about it. Unless you're talking to investors, in which case you would promise them the fantasy. And maybe that's how you play that game, since otherwise you won't get funding. Great, if you want to do that, go ahead. But when it comes to actual results from the engineering team, remember that that was just a fantasy that you promised. Now, coming back to what is realistic, among the two options, the time horizon comes into play. Suppose your startup has only a quarter of runway, money left in the bank before it goes bankrupt. Then you would probably optimize, you should probably choose bad engineering practices. Or you're aiming for an acquisition that will close in a month or two, and you want to show as much growth as possible in that time period. Again, you may want to optimize for this. If you're going to die in a month, spend as much as you want on your credit card. It won't be a problem. By the time the bill comes, you are gone. In this case, it may be running out of money. It may be a positive outcome like an acquisition. It may be anything, right? So if you have a very short time window of a quarter, you should use bad engineering practices. But if you have a longer time horizon of multiple quarters, which most startups do. Right? They're planning for success, they're not planning for an exit or a failure immediately. In that case, they should pay the price, put in the foundation, build these good engineering practices. They will pay off. In the first quarter, again, you may regret them. Why am I not seeing results? But you should keep in mind that just because you can't see the foundation below the surface doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean it doesn't add value. So, the moral of this story is choose good or bad engineering practices depending on your time horizon. And accept the consequences of your trade off. If you choose good engineering practices, accept that in the first quarter it may not be the best decision. If you choose bad engineering practices, accept that over a year it will be a bad decision. This is why we call it a trade off. Each of them has its advantages and its disadvantages. When you make a choice, you need to accept both the pros and cons of your choice. If you'd like me to help you accelerate your startup, my consulting link is in the description. Thank you.